I have two heroes, Steven Bartlett and Alex Ramosi. Alex, he builds a multi-million-dollar empire and shows the blueprint to $1 billion. Steven, he runs a powerhouse media company, manages a investment fund, and became the youngest shark ever on Dragon's Den. Both raw, both real, both self-made. A few weeks ago, I got lucky. I am still in Bali, and so was Steven Bartlett. And I got to learn from him live in person. This was one of those moments that hit different when you're in it. When you're building, when you're ambitious, when you're knee deep in your own chaos. So in this video, I'm unpacking the biggest takeaways of that day. How to know if an idea is worth chasing, how movement beats failure, why the right people might be your sharpest edge, and how to avoid burnout in a world that keeps on yelling, hustle harder. But more than that, this video is about navigating the gray zone, the lonely stretch between where you are right now and the vision you're building that no one else fully sees yet. If you've ever caught yourself thinking, is this even worth it? I just need some guidance. This one is for you. One of the first things Steven said was so simple that it sounded obvious, but it landed. He was talking about trying lots of things, quitting when they don't work, but also knowing when something is worth pushing through. Whether it's a business, a relationship, a partnership, this applies. He said there are two questions you need to ask if you want to know whether it's worth pursuing. Is there something I can do? Is there something I can do to make this better? Is there something I can do to fix this partnership, business, or relationship? And the second one, is it worth it? Is it worth the time, effort, and energy? Maybe even the money. Yes. That's the filter. There's one catch though, you'll never have 100% certainty. By the time you have all the data, it's probably too late. You can only connect the dots afterwards. So what do? Only 51 to 60% certainty is all you need. Not the perfect entire 100% full picture, just enough to move forward and make the decision. Because certainty doesn't show up before the jump. It shows up as you jump. Through actions, through movement, through feedback, and collect data to make data-driven decisions. To stop the guesswork. That's what Steven called the rate of failure and experimentation.
Actually, the most important teacher in business and in life, and this is especially pertinent today in a world where the rate of change means that the correct answer to anything you're contending with, whether it's how do I do marketing, how do I make a product, what blockchain shall I use for my startup, the correct sort of mental model is I need to increase my rate of failure and experimentation. And I had kids come up to me a couple of days ago in Bali, and they presented me with a question. They said, we're doing really well in Bali, we want to expand around the world to lots of different regions. Which regions should we expand into? And in this newest season of my life, where I realized that the rate of change is so significant that if you're 10 today, by the age of 60, you'll experience a year's change in 11 days. If you're 40 by the age of 60, you'll experience a year's change in about 90 days. In such a world, you're not going to get answers from people like me on stages like this. Because by the time that I've told you, book me to speak, I come here. By the time I'm here, by the time you've read my book, which took 2 years to publish, the answers are no longer relevant. And if you think about AI, the rate in which these models are evolving and updating means that like any talk you heard on stage by a guy like me 6 months ago is kind of invalid now. Unless they were talking in principles, unless they were talking in fishing rods and not fish. And what I mean by that is a fishing rod means that you can continue to fish for the rest of your life and feed yourself, which is a principle. And a fish is like a tactic or a strategy. And these are ephemeral, they expire. Right. So the fishing rod here in terms of learning, and going back to your question about what's been the best tutor or mentor in my life, it is having a bias towards failure experimentation.
And of course, he didn't talk just strategy. He talked people. Because if there's one thing that either fuel your momentum or wreck it entirely, it's who you're surrounded by. And then Steven said something that cracked open a whole myth we've been sold. It's okay to depend on people. This idea that the perfect independence is the goal is one of the biggest lies society pushes. That hit because most of us grew up on, if you want it done right, do it yourself. Or the saying, never count on anyone but yourself. Or now, automate everything so you don't need help. So what do? We build solo, we grind in silence, we burn ourselves out trying to be self-sufficient machines. But here's the truth. Pushing through alone is a fast track to collapse. What you really need, the right support system. People who fuel your life, not snuff it out. People who challenge you, hold you, check you. People who want to see you win. Steven broke down 5 principles to avoid burnout, and almost all of them come back to one word: dependence. The connection you have with others and yourself.
That's what makes my job really, really, really fun, is I do it with a group of people around me. And I actually met a kid at Bali 4 days ago, he might even be here, who came up to me, saw me sat in this coffee shop doing some work, and he came up and he described his life to me, and it was a perfect picture of independence. And he told me how miserable and burnt out he was. He used the word burn out. So I said to him, hey, this is how I think someone ends up. If I was trying to burn you out, here's what I'd do. I'd make you work alone, completely on your own. I would make the thing you're working on someone else's dream, like someone else's mission. So I'd make you like a freelancer for someone else's thing, alone. And then I would give you very little control over like when you work and how you work, because the studies show that causes physiological and psychological deterioration. You literally get cardiac problems if you don't feel like you have control over your work. I would not give you a sense of forward motion. Because humans, for some reason, we need this feeling of forward motion. Probably something left from our ancestors who built all of this, who were dissatisfied with stagnation. They wanted to build bigger buildings and come out of the cave and do skyscrapers. So in your DNA is this need for progress. And lastly, I'd make you work with arseholes or nobody. Either of those 2 things, you'd be burnt out, trust me. You'll be coming to me and saying you're burnt out. I don't think burnout is a consequence of how many hours you put in. Because I tell you what, I can work on things that I love and that light me up and that capture my heart. I could work again 7 days a week if my girlfriend didn't exist. I would So I think it's a consequence of these fundamentals. But I also don't really think the industry matters tremendous. It goes back to this point about find your passion. I've been like too passionate about like 15 things in my life. Psychedelics. We were building a psychedelics business called Atai. Then podcasting, then social media, the blockchain. We built our third web business in San Francisco. Consumer goods, matcha. That never mattered. What mattered was these underlying 5 principles, which is autonomy, control, sense of forward motion. Actually feeling challenged is in there as well. And this is why video games get increasingly more difficult. Because if they didn't, you would lose psychological motivation and you wouldn't get into a flow state. So it needs to be incrementally challenging, working with people you love and you like, and that's supportive, which insulates you, a sense of control, and sense of forward motion. If you have those things, you're not going to come and tell me you're burnt out. Trust me, you're not.
And that brings us to the most powerful piece of all, your inner voice. Steven said, listen to that whisper, that quiet pull inside you. That's your North Star. And honestly, that part made me pause. Because when you're building something big, something that doesn't exist yet, something no one around you fully gets, you have to trust yourself. Even when the doubts get loud, even when everyone else is doing it differently. The whisper never shouts. It doesn't beg for your attention. It just stays. And when you learn to listen to it, when you walk your own path in your own authentic way, that only you can walk in that way, that's when you start making moves that actually matter. Because trends changes. The algorithm, it changes. But your North Star, that's yours. And that's the only thing that will keep you steady when the noise gets deafening.
But what I did is I was really tuned into the voice inside. It kind of goes back to what I said about quitting. All of us in this room, who are in search of answers and what's the right strategy and what's my passion and what's my calling. I think God, or whatever you believe in, or life, or physiology, or nihilism, or whatever you believe, gave you this wonderful compass inside you called how do you feel? And I think what society does, social media, your parents who want you to be doctor, lawyer, dentist, or whatever, have done a remarkable job of over your upbringing is convincing you to ignore that in favor of something else, some sort of external signal. So I one of my things is just to get people back to that. I think it knows way more about you than you probably consciously know about yourself. And so that has become my guiding light. So I'll continue to follow that. I'll quit incredibly quickly. When something feels good and it rewards me and it feels like my ikigai, I'll do more of that thing and I'll double down and I'll invest more resources there. And let's see what happens.
And here's what tied it all together: movement. Steven said, the more you move forward, the less likely you are to fail. Why? Motion builds momentum. Every step, every test, every failure, it's data. It's clarity you wouldn't get standing still, overthinking, waiting for the perfect moment. When you move, you learn. You get feedback, you build resilience. You see what's working, you cut what's not. You collect the dots so you can connect them later. That's why people who keep moving, they don't burn out the same way, because they're not stuck. They're not clinging to what doesn't work. They're progressing, even when it's messy. And when you combine that with the right support system, the right principles, the right internal compass, that's when it all starts to click. Not because it gets easier, but because you get clearer. And let one thing be clear: if this video was of any value to you, subscribe to the channel. Here I document my journey as a nomad entrepreneur, traveling the world and building my company, an AI agency. You will get the lessons I learn and that we figure out together about AI, Bitcoin, or just traveling as a nomad entrepreneur. But if there's one thing you really must do, it's watch this video, because I know this video will be of value to you. So really, click on it. And beyond that, as always, take action, create your own story, and I see you in the next one. Ciao!